Welcome to another episode of Cheers to Careers. I'm Steve Ridinghouse, the current outreach coordinator at the KU J School. Today, I'm fortunate to be joined by 2005 KU grad, that's hard to believe, Ellyn, Angelotti, Kamke. Ellyn, welcome.
Thanks, Steve. I know time flies.
I know I've known you, I think you were still a college student. You were at the Journal World at the time, and you were kind of on that cutting edge of multimedia training, trying to train us how to use all that technology. So what do you remember about that time almost 20 years ago, which is hard to believe?
You know, I remember loving being at the Journal World because I was getting to learn from all of these talented professionals who had a lot of, solid journalism experience. And I felt like I was adding some value because I was able to add the multimedia and then eventually social media piece. And so I felt like it was a really great partnership and opportunity to both learn and add value, which is always a good middle of the Venn diagram to be in.
And I know are you in St. Petersburg right now? Is that where?
Yeah. Yep. I'm in St. Petersburg, Florida.
And you pretty much have been in Florida ever since you graduated, correct?
Yeah. After we wrapped up game that summer, the multimedia weekly covering the Little League softball and baseball teams in Lawrence, like they were the New York Yankees, which I think was our tagline then. I moved down to Naples, Florida. And then a couple years later, moved up to St. Petersburg to work at the Poynter Institute.
So what was your plan when you graduated? I mean, did you know you would transition to law? Because I know you're with director of legal for Hearsay, yep. Correct? And then you're getting ready to transition to Raymond James as assistant general counsel. I mean, was law always part of your plan, or did that just happen when you went to Florida?
You know, I was digging through one of my old save boxes a couple years ago, and I found a little drawing that I made when I was in first grade, and it said I wanted to be a lawyer. And so apparently it's something I've always wanted to do. I think my passion was journalism from the time I was in a freshman in high school. I had worked at the Kansas City Star and worked at my school newspaper. And then when I came to KU, I was always on the journalism track, but I also double majored in Spanish. And so while I was at KU, I had dabbled in meteorology and Spanish. And so journalism, like you have seen throughout your career, is a great foundation for not just traditional media jobs, but you can pivot and do a lot of things with the foundational elements of journalism. And so law was always in the back of my mind. I think in college at the time, I think you probably remember I was working with the baseball team as the manager, and I thought I was going to be a baseball scout or do something in sports. It ends up, I did start off in sports journalism, but I married into sports. My husband is actually in sports now. And so I think that having both of us in sports would be a little bit more of a challenge, having, two young kids, but I still feel like I get my fix following the Tampa Bay Lightning. And we are season ticket members for our local soccer team. So definitely get to stay involved through both our youth sports that we get our fill of through the girls, and then also just with the local teams as well.
And speaking of Tampa Bay Lightning, I know they just won a recent Stanley Cup. Do you have any Stanley Cup, a miniature one behind you there? Or I know I think I saw part of you touch the cup.
I should have had my rings. We have the rings here in the safe. But so we won the Stanley Cup back-to-back, one during the COVID season and then last year as well. And we don't have a replica Stanley Cup. However, I did go to Pier 1, and we have some vases in the living room that we refer to them as the family cup. They look like Stanley Cups, but the girls like to call them the family cups. So we were very fortuitous in buying two of them. So we're like, they're both the Stanley Cups.
Baseball to hockey. I mean, you probably didn't do too much with hockey when you're Lawrence in the Kansas City area, did you?
No, but when I was in Naples, I actually covered the Everblades,
okay.
Which is the clever name of the minor league hockey team, the ECHL hockey team. And so that was one of my primary beats when I was working there. So we had a really rabid blog and podcast and then vodcast that we did in Naples. So I did get to learn a little bit about hockey when I was in Naples.
And kind of back to the law school, you went to Stetson Law, correct?
Yeah.
What year did you graduate law school?
In 2012. Okay. So I worked at the Naples Daily News right out of school, working with some Lawrence Journal World expats. And then went to Poynter and was there for about 5 years. And I remember when I was driving up from Naples to St. Pete to move for the Poynter job, I remember seeing a sign that said Stetson University College of Law. And it was something, my plan B, if I didn't pursue journalism, was to work at KU athletic department and then go to law school. So I was thinking about going to law school when I was in Lawrence. And then that didn't, then I moved on to Naples. And so it was always something I had considered, a path I had considered, given the writing, given the, a lot of the interviewing techniques I still feel are foundational elements I've relied on since practicing law. So was at Poynter for a few years and then started to go to Stetson University College of Law in its part-time program. And the focus there was to kind of similar to when I was at the Lawrence Journal World. We had a lot of folks on the faculty who were teaching about writing and broadcast. I was teaching about social media, and one of the burgeoning areas was social media law. There wasn't a lot of precedence about Facebook copyright or defamation. And so that was an area, I call myself a blue ocean seeker. And that's really a nod to the book, Blue Ocean Strategy, where you try to find a path that not everybody's trying to go down that same path. So you're not trying to, beat out other people and make it a red ocean, but you're just creating a new path and going down somewhere that hasn't been chartered. And social media law was an opportunity to start to write law review articles or develop some knowledge, that I could share with others that was for, combining some of the principled areas of media law, but applying it into a new venue. And so that's really, that was how I positioned it to Poynter. And there were a lot of synergies in the teaching I was doing at Poynter with what I was learning in the classroom. And so it was a great opportunity to be able to combine all of that.
And you probably can answer this very quickly, but social media law, talk about how much that has evolved. You've been there pretty much since it began, like in 2000, in my opinion, it seemed like 2008 was kind of the big year social media kind of really took off. How has that evolved?
Yeah, like with Facebook and Twitter, Facebook started in like 2003, 2004, Twitter 2006. So you started to see a lot of, disputes start to take place while I was in law school. In fact, I wrote my law review article on Twibel, Twitter libel, which was online defamation, basing it on the Courtney Love Twitter libel case that was in the forefront at the time. And so really, both with online journalism while I was studying it at KU, Rick Musser had started the online newsroom, multimedia newsroom during my undergrad years at KU. Now it's probably a very established, you probably renovated that part of the building, definitely since I've been there, 20 years ago. That's crazy. But podcasts, now they've made a reemergence in the media landscape, but a lot of issues regarding lifting images off of Facebook and using it in broadcasts, those were coming up frequently as ethical questions that we were handling at Poynter. And I was able to start to use those as case studies and be able to understand what the legal implications were and what those legal risks were, to be able to use that as educational opportunities.
And I think I saw online, or maybe you sent a photo. You've also given a TED Talk, correct?
Well, I actually organized a couple TEDx events at Poynter. And so through doing those, I was able to present some as well. But TEDx is another opportunity, where at Poynter, we were trying to figure out what was next, what was innovating media. And I was able to pull in some thought leaders who were on the cusp of interesting areas of journalism. Ben-Ha, when he did the I Can't Has Cheeseburger, we had a lot of folks from a lot of journalism startups who came and spoke and shared a lot of knowledge, just to help push the more traditional journalists to think more open about the future of media and think about how we can evolve as journalists and we can evolve the profession and the practice of journalism. And I think that that's been one of the areas I've tried to carry over through my career when I transitioned into the legal industry.
And it sounds like you do a lot with legal, because I think I read you focus on what, corporate transactions, information technology, real estate agreements. So it sounds like you got your hands involved in a lot of different areas of law.
Yeah, so I had been a pointer for about 9 years. And then right after I had my first daughter, Quinn, who's now 6, I joined the corporate transactions team at Raymond James, which is very different than media. It's a highly regulated Fortune 500 financial institution and a bank. And so at first I focused on some of my core strengths. And so I gravitated towards providing advice and guidance to the marketing department. And through the work on the corporate transactions team, we work a lot with information technology and a lot of the financial operations. I had done some leasing work when I was at Pointer, and so started to work more with the leasing team at Raymond James. And so my practice, I left Raymond James a year ago, and the past year I've been working with some fintech startups and companies that are actually working in social media compliance and social media supervision. And now I'm going back to Raymond James to be in a very similar role. I'll be working on corporate transactions and financial operations. So a lot of the operational elements of Fortune 500, bank are very applicable to journalism. I find myself going into that environment and asking a lot of questions to be able to learn more about the business. But a lot of it is, adding context, drafting contracts. The principles of writing are still important, whether it's a news story or a press release or a book or a contract. And so I've been able to both be able to build relationships by a lot of those interviewing techniques, being open and curious, being able to, genuinely come into a situation and try to understand what the issue is rather than coming in with a predisposed opinion of something. So very much like, when you approach a news story,
Right.
You're not coming in with an opinion, you're coming in and asking questions and trying to help think about what the issues are and how best to communicate that. So those have been some of the correlations I've seen from journalism into the practice of law, especially in-house counsel working for a company.
And I know the past 2 years have been crazy for pretty much everybody. Have you been pretty much working remotely the last 2 years, or kind of like hybrid, or how has that worked for you?
Yeah, I'd say, well, the role at Hearsay was 100% remote. Raymond James, prior to that, I'd been remote since March 2020. And so definitely, have curated my background to, of course, include a Jayhawk in the background, which a lot of people notice. But yeah, I've really gotten comfortable working remotely. I will be going back into the office, which I am a true extrovert at heart. While I do value my time and being able to jam out and get my work done, I think I will really value being back in the office and seeing people and collaborating in person as well.
And speaking of time, I know you and your husband have 2 young daughters, Cora and Quinn. How do you manage that time? I mean, both of you with different busy lifestyles. I mean, I assume you've made it work for the past 5-6 years?
Yeah, I mean, I struggled with, how am I going to have my career and have 2 young children? We were able to find a great daycare or preschool where a lot of the kids that joined that daycare when they were babies are still going to school with my oldest. And so for me, I try to build trust in those tiny moments throughout the day and always channel how I talk to my kids is going to be their inner voice. And so that's how I try to, at the end of the day, when I'm stressed out, try not to take it out on them, but try to think about what they're going through right now. And I have my moments where I'm not the best version of myself, but also showing them grace and showing myself some grace. Also relying on my parents moved down from Kansas. And so they spend a lot of time with grandma and grandpa, and grandma and grandpa help with pickup and go to the parks, and they get to go swim at their house. And I think at the end of the day, I find a lot of value in knowing that by working and having a career, I'm providing them a really good example of that they can set goals and accomplish those goals. And to me, that's really important. Also seeing them develop their independent senses of self and knowing that they can form relationships, carry on about their lives independently for me. While sometimes I'm like, oh, I want them to need me. It's still good to see even Cora at 3.5, seeing her develop that gives me a lot of really great joy. And then at the same time, I also do enjoy, like yesterday we were at Disney. And so being down here in Florida, being able to have access to great beaches, great weather, a lot of, tourist destinations, we find a great balance of, sometimes we know we need a day as a family, or I need a day with the girls and they need some time with me, and being able to make that time together. And most of the time it's as we're going to bed or as we're getting ready for the day. So making that time that we do have together really count.
So what do Quinn and Cora think their mom does?
So it's funny because they think I do yoga. They think I know that the Quins told me I do yoga. They've been to my office before, and I have, brought them, we bring them to Raymond James for Halloween and St. Patrick's Day or whether events like that. So they know I have an office, but they think that I just Zoom. I'm on a lot of Zoom meetings. I talk to people a lot. I send lots of emails. And then, of course, lawyers, they do a lot of yoga, which, I mean, that's not the worst perception of lawyers. So I'll take it.
And I know you have that Jayhawk basketball right behind you. So how's your bracket doing? You still have KU in your bracket, I hope.
Oh my gosh. This is the first year since 1990 that I did not do a bracket. And it's actually, I'm kind of having some joy of missing out. I'm having a little JOMO of like, I just get to enjoy March Madness for what it is. And of course I get to wear all of my KU gear, my 20-year-old KU gear. I think I've gotten a few shirts since then, but a lot of it's just my old school college stuff that I wore to games when I was at Ellyn Fieldhouse. But I kind of am enjoying not worrying about my bracket so much for the first time. I think I'll do it.
Is your husband from South Florida?
No, he went to Virginia Tech. And so I've definitely talked to him a lot about the Orange Bowl, like that was our shining moment in KU football. And he's like, well, we go to the Orange Bowl all the time. And I'm like, yeah, but you lost to us. So.
Well, one last question. I think we're about 7 weeks away from commencement. I mean, if you had to give kind of a keynote address to the class of 22 or journalism students in general, what would be kind of your primary message?
Yeah, I thought a lot about that. I thought that was a really good question. I was really honored to get to answer it. And I think, one of the thoughts that has come and been core, especially during the past couple of years where there's been a lot of uncertainty, is to always choose courage over comfort. That's something that having that vulnerability and being able to take risks has always been an important part of, the fabric of my career and my life since leaving KU. To leave, Kansas and Lawrence and go down to Naples and not really know where it was going to take me, but just trust that it was going to be a good path to somewhere that had a lot of open doors and kept opening doors along the way. That's been something that I've always been able to rely on. At the same time, I think that society sometimes will try to define what success is. And one of my favorite authors right now is Matt Haig. He's my favorite fiction author. And one of the quotes that he said has really stuck with me that, and it's actually from this book called The Comfort Book. And the title of this passage is Pizza. So my daughter actually drew a picture of the passage, but the crux of the passage is the best of life exists beyond the things that we're encouraged to crave. And the pizza tie-in is that, pizza tastes good no matter what your job title is. And so especially as I've been exploring career options over the past couple years, figuring out like what I want to do and what makes me happy and what gives me joy and where I can make an impact has been really important. And that's really been something that I've encouraged both myself, my husband, my friends, as we're considering career choices, to think about, how do we pursue happiness? the whole scheme of things. You're always gonna, if you have a job, you're always gonna have what you need to get by, or that's the assumption anyways, that's a hope anyway. But how can you find a career path that you enjoy doing and want to do for a long term? So that's been pretty heavy with me. So I read a lot of Brene Brown, a lot of Adam Grant, and continuing to learn from them, think like journalists, think like scientists, and also just be, open and curious to what the world can offer and how you can make an impact.
No, well said, Ellyn. Hey, I appreciate you taking the time. I don't know if you have your KU.
Absolutely.
I always like to do a cheers. Wow, that's a good one. It's been fascinating to follow your career path for almost 20 years. That's hard to believe. But again, cheers to your careers, and I hope all goes well in Florida. Thanks, Ellyn.
Thanks, Steve. It's great to see all the good work you're doing back on Mount Oread, and it's great to see you and the family doing so well. Please keep in touch.
All right, thanks.
Okay, bye.